All right, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you how to build the sheet from scratch. This is going to work best if you have a multiple choice test, but we'll talk at the end about how to modify it in case you have something with a rubric instead. So the first thing I do is I set up my cell for the class period. I already have it widened a little bit because I know in this column right here, I'm going to be typing in the students' names. So I'm going to merge cells 1 and 2A. This is the merge cell button, and I'm going to just leave it period for now because eventually I'm going to copy this sheet for every class period and it'll be easier to go back and enter in the class period after that. The next column, B, is where I'm going to start my test. So the top cell, B1, is where I'm going to put the standard for that question. So we're going to say that question number 1 was standard 8.2B. Then I'm going to put number 1 and the correct answer choice. And I would do that all the way across for however many questions there were on the test. And we're going to stop there, but you could go on for however long the test was. The next column is going to be the students' how many questions they got correct. So I'm going to merge these cells again. I'm going to do number of questions correct. The next column I know is going to be my raw score. Then the next one would be if there were any bonus points on the test. And then I'm going to add to remind myself to enter in the number as a decimal, not as a whole number. Then if I need to curve the test, I'm going to put that in this column. And I'm also going to put a note that for this test, that means that passing was 58%. For my pre-AP classes, or if you have honors classes, you might want the curve score to be a little different. So if you aren't going to curve their score as much, you might have this be a separate column where passing is, let's say, 70% instead of 58%. Then for me, I'm tracking whether or not my students annotate. So in this column, I'm going to write did students annotate. And I'm going to write a note again to put Y or N. Now I'm going to format these cells so that they look a little nicer. I like my font to be Cambrian. I want everything in size 12. I want this top row to be bold. I want everything to be centered. And then I like this little button because this is the vertical alignment. So that's going to put everything back in the middle. And then I want the text to be wrapped. Now you can see some of this is getting cut off a little bit. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to adjust the size of the cells. All right, now we're ready to start formatting the automated stuff. So to get that green and red to pop up when students get questions correct or incorrect, that's going to be conditional formatting. So I'm going to go back to question number 1 and I'm going to highlight all the cells that I want to be formatted. So since this is kind of my master copy, and I know my largest class has 25 students in it, I'm going to highlight 25 cells. I'm not going to stop at 25 right here because I'm using the top 2 cells for something else. So I knew that I need to go down to 27. Then we go to Format, Conditional Formatting. Over here it says Format Cells If. I'm going to change this to text contains, or you can do it to text is exactly. And that's going to be A for the correct answer. Formatting style is going to be green background. Then I'm going to add a second rule. If text does not contain A, then I want the formatting style to be a red background because that means the student got the question incorrect. And I would do that for every question on the test. And as you can see, it has turned red because there's nothing inputted. But as I start to input students' answers, it will change automatically. For the number of questions correct, again, there is no easy formula to count that based on the highlighted cells right now. So that's what you're going to have to input manually. Then for the raw score, this is going to be a formula. So to start a formula, I'm going to do the equal sign. For this, I want it to be the number of questions correct. So I click the cell before, which was E3, divided by the number of questions on the test, which was 3. And then I'm going to press enter. I want this to show up as a percentage. So I'm going to go ahead and highlight the cell right now, go to format, number, and then I want more formats, or you can do percent here, but I don't want the 2 decimal points. So I'm going to go to format again, and we want 1 decimal point right here. Apply. I'm also going to want to copy that because I want it to be the same for every student. So to copy this cell to all the cells below, I can click this blue square in the bottom right hand corner. My cursor turns into a little plus sign. I click and then I drag it all the way down. And now if I click here, now this cell is coordinated with the one previous to it. So you see it says E4 now instead of E3. And that'll be the same all the way down. For the bonus points, I'm going to leave this blank. This is where I'm going to manually enter in any bonus points. But again, since we're dealing with percentages, I'm going to want to do this as a decimal point. So that would be, let's say a student got 5 bonus points. You would do decimal point 0.5 for 5 bonus points. Moving towards the right, we have the curve score. So again, I give STAR style tests in my classroom. So for the STAR test, passing is around 58%, but at my school, 70% is passing. So I have to reconcile that in my grade book. So this is going to be another formula. It's going to be equal. I'm going to do open parenthesis because I'm going to add my bonus points at this point also. So I'm going to do the raw score plus the bonus points. So that's the next cell. Close parenthesis. Then I'm going to do plus 0.12 because there's a 12-point difference between 58 and 70. And then I'm going to press enter. So if, for example, if this student scored a 60% on the test, or it's 3 questions, so let's say he scored a 66, that would change it to 78 in my grade book because technically, according to the STAR, he did pass. Let's say I had a bonus question that was worth 5 points. He got it correct. I add 5 points. Now it changes his score to an 83. But if he's in my pre-AP class, passing is going to be 70%. So that's the same as my school. But I still want to add the bonus points. So this time it would be equal the raw score plus the bonus points. Enter. So since he got the bonus question correct, he would bring his grade up to passing. And then for did students annotate, again, that's just me manually entering in Y if he did annotate or N if he did not. I'm going to want to copy these cells all the way down as well, just like the raw score column. All right, now we're going to move to the bottom of the sheet. This is where we're going to look at individual questions. So if you remember from the original document that I had some cells hidden. So we have to set those up first before we do the question mastery. So for this first question, I'm going to do a formula that's going to count every time a student got this question correct. So this is going to be equal. The formula is count if, open parenthesis. The first thing I'm going to do is my range. So I'm going to highlight the cells I want it to look at. Then I'm going to do comma. You need to do quotation mark and then what you want it to count. So I want it to look for the letter A because that was the correct answer. Then I'm going to do another quotation mark and close parenthesis. So you can see here that it says 0 because currently nobody has taken the test. There's no A's inputted. But as soon as I start putting in A's, or if I start putting in answer choices, it's going to start counting it automatically for me. Now to make it a little bit easier, I'm going to copy this cell over to the next two. But then I'm going to go back, I'm going to click on the cell, I'm going to come up here and I'm going to change the correct answer. So for this one, I want it to count if it's D. Same for question number 3. Now for my statistics, which we're going to start at the bottom here, I am going to want another count if formula here to count if the students passed. So we can do that under here, equals count if, the range, and then this time I want it to count if the raw score was above 58%. So I'm going to do the greater than sign, 58%, close parentheses. And again, right now, there's nothing above 58, so it says 0. If I'm going to have a pre-AP class, I'm going to do this column for if the passing score was 70. And then I'm also going to do a count if for if the student's annotated. All right. Then here I'm going to do my question mastery. I want this to be in Cambria also. I'm going to put it in italics and I'm going to change the alignment so that I know I'm working with something different. And here I'm going to do a new formula. This is going to be equal the number of students who got the question correct divided by, and then I'm going to put the number of students in the class. So since this is the master copy, for right now, I'm just going to put in cap locks number of students in the class. Now that's going to come back with an error, but when I copy this to all my individual classes, I can easily click on this and change it to however many students are in the class. And again, I'm going to copy this over, and it's going to automatically change it to the cell for that column. If it doesn't, you can just click up and go ahead and change it. Alright, so now that I'm done with the question mastery, I can hide this row. So I click on the number over here, it highlights the whole row, right click, hide row. The next thing we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to calculate the standard mastery for the whole test. So I create a little box, I merge all these cells. This is going to be standards mastery. Then I put each standard that was on the test. So that was 8.2b and 8.4 were the only ones covered on this test. Then, as you can see, 8.2b had 2 questions associated with it. So what I want to do is I want to do equal average, this cell from the first question, comma, this cell from the second question, close parenthesis. And again, it's going to say error right now because we have number of students in class. But if I change this to the number of students that were in the class, this would come back as a percentage. Again, you're going to want to change the format of these to a percentage just like we did over here. so it comes back consistent. Since 8.4 was only tested once, I'm just going to do equal this cell, and it'll come back whatever's there, but it'll all be in one place. Then to make it stand out a little bit more from everything else, since I only used these 2 cells, I'm going to change this, and then I'm going to put this in a box by itself. And you can make as many of these boxes as you want for whatever you're tracking. And those are the basics.